Hi everyone, my name is Sai Vennam and I'm with the IBM Cloud team. Today we're doing something a little bit different. I'm joined with an IDC analyst. Mary, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Mary Johnston Turner, Research Vice President for Cloud Management at IDC. I have a particular interest in multi-cloud management and operations and the impact of DevOps.
So we're excited to have you here today, and I think you've shared a lot of great perspectives with me already on what we can kind of focus on for this topic that we have today. But before we get into that a little bit more, maybe we should tackle a little bit of those challenges that companies and enterprises are seeing when trying to make that adoption, that move to the cloud.
Well, yeah, I think we've seen that many organizations are moving to DevOps, cloud-native environments that create more change, more frequent change, more scaling and security and operational issues. And there's a real tension that developers often get dragged into doing many activities that are not really part of their day job. Rather than coding and really thinking about business innovation, they're finding source libraries and doing integrations and testing, and they're dealing with infrastructure issues. And IT ops teams are being asked to run environments and applications that are cloud native at very large scale. And that creates a lot of challenges, particularly when they go to multi-cloud architectures.
Exactly, and that's what we're trying to solve here today with the announcements that we made around Cloud Paks, with the sixth one, Cloud Pak for Security, coming out. So let's kind of break this down and start with what we've got sketched out here. So we've got a number of Cloud Paks here, and to learn more and see more about Cloud Paks specifically, check out some of our other videos. Today we want to dive into a key example and then quickly also set the stage for what we've got here. So we've sketched out these 6 Cloud Paks, and I think you can guess what I'm getting at next here. We've got a couple boxes sketched out here. We're going to be talking about where the infrastructure and what they're based on.
Okay, well, I'm really interested though first, what are these Cloud Pak things?
Fair, good point. So what IBM has done is basically taken those key challenges, the ones that you've laid out, and created a kind of singular way of middleware that's packaged up and is capable of things like being able to run anywhere, taking advantage of the Red Hat OpenShift platform, and more importantly, it's showing the engineering work that we've done to containerize our middleware solutions and make them available through what we're calling Cloud Paks.
So I guess maybe I'm not totally sure. Why is it that Cloud Paks are so much easier to operate?
Great point. So I think the best approach, the best way I can explain this, so with Cloud Paks, we're bringing together a set of IBM middleware. In the past, you might have had to go out to those individual solutions on your own to figure out how to run, operate, and deploy them. By bringing those together into clear use cases, things like integration, automation, multi-cloud management, we're able to make them easier to operate. We can have them running on top of that familiar container platform, that OpenShift layer that we're really pushing.
Okay, and so, I know that the vast majority of organizations, I think we said 93%, are committed to a multi-cloud environment. So how is OpenShift helping me with that kind of operational challenge?
Right, exactly. So taking a look here, let's start with the first layer of that puzzle, right? So we've got OpenShift. Now, OpenShift is kind of unique in a way that it's actually supported in any environment. You can run that on-prem, in any cloud, and particularly also in IBM Cloud. So sketching that out over here, we can do any cloud. In addition, we can do on-prem. But what we're focusing on today is the fact that they're optimized to run on IBM's cloud. And I think that's kind of what's so attractive about taking advantage of these Cloud Paks is the fact that the truth is, with our customers, there's a kind of broad spectrum of kind of flavors of how they're running applications. They could be running applications in the cloud, on-prem, multiple clouds even, kind of like we talked about. So how do we give customers a uniform way, a single pane of glass to manage all of those different environments?
Can you give me an example of how this would all come together?
Let's do it. So let's say, for example, I've got a Java application, a monolithic Java application, and I'll sketch that out right here. Now, let's start with one kind of simple explanation or use case for what a company might want to do with this Java app. Let's say they want to start breaking this down into containers, so breaking down that monolith, And so very basically, let's say their engineers are now tasked with creating a separate front end and back end out of this monolith and doing so in a containerized way. So for one, they can take advantage of Cloud Pak for applications to do that. So taking advantage of the Cloud Pak for apps, they can now have access to tools such as Cabanero, which is an open source tool that allows you to start thinking about applications in a containerized way. And even gives you the DevOps capabilities to really allow your dev team to be able to tackle that. So using Cloud Pak for apps and maybe some of their transformation advisor capabilities, let's say that they're able to successfully break apart this Java application into a front end and a back end application, which are container based.
And just to be clear, that means that now they can innovate and move both of these components separately, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So let's say, for example, this was a banking industry where their backend is required to be very secure, and they're not quite ready to move to the cloud yet. They want to stay on-prem. Well, they can keep that that backend running on an on-prem side. So let's kind of delineate that right here. Let's say that this continues to be on-prem, whereas this, they can start kind of scaling that separately in the cloud.
Okay.
So for that, we've taken advantage of Cloud Pak for apps. Next, let's say that there's kind of very important information that they have in their backend and their front end, but they want to expose it to third parties in interesting ways. Let's say, for example, payment applications basically that allow vendors to put the banking app directly in their websites to allow users to pay with their services. So as an example, they might want to establish a set of APIs and expose them with third parties. So let's say, for example, we've got mobile phones here, and we want to expose basically some of these sets of APIs to that mobile phone in a secure way. So again, kind of coming back to our Cloud Pak base, we can use Cloud Pak for integration, which is going to allow us to create a kind of gateway. So this is going to be actually powered by API Connect, which is a part of that Cloud Pak, and it's going to allow us to basically expose key APIs in that backend in a secure fashion through this gateway, so our mobile users are able to then start taking advantage of them. And now this is a great way for, in our example, that banking customer to expose their backend, expose their data in a secure way that allows third parties and end users to be able to make payments using their systems.
Okay, so that was the back end mostly that you just talked about. But what about that front end? What are the benefits of moving that into the cloud, and how are these Cloud Paks going to help?
Right. So let's say, for example, that this organization is trying to expand their footprint to be global, right? So their backend, maybe they're required to keep that on-prem in their secure data centers, but that front end, they want to scale it across multiple data centers across the world. So that's kind of what they can start thinking about. So let's say that there's a third-party cloud that they want to go with, and they can start, deploying a front-end application there, and we'll say that this is in the, Asia Pacific area. And then again, they can kind of do the same thing with another cloud that potentially they want to move forward with that same front-end application, and maybe that is in the, let's say this is in EU. So kind of that's the approach here. They can start breaking apart that front end and scaling it and using global load balancers closer to where their customers are, while that backend is in their same kind of familiar on-prem private area.
And looking down here, that means that they would have deployed Cloud Paks running on OpenShift in all these different environments so that they would run consistently?
That's an option, exactly. So in our particular case, the customer may have used Cloud Pak for applications to help them break apart and containerize these applications. But because they're using OpenShift, they're in that familiar kind of space, they can then start thinking about using OpenShift to run those assets in different clouds as well. Right, it's about getting your foot in the door, building that culture within your company where users are getting more familiar with that OpenShift environment because they used it through Cloud Pak for apps to break apart their application, and then thinking next steps on how do we use this to orchestrate across multiple clouds, multiple environments, where
Okay.
OpenShift truly excels.
Okay, and my research shows that a lot of organizations recognize that containers and Kubernetes creates new management requirements, and often cases they're looking to cloud providers like IBM to maybe help them with some of those new capabilities. Is there anything in particular that the IBM Cloud's doing to address that?
Right, exactly. So these Cloud Paks, as we mentioned, they're supported in any cloud, supported on-prem, but we particularly called out IBM Cloud, and thanks for bringing us back to this, is because we have a fully supported experience that's streamlined, that allows you to install Cloud Paks, but then also manage that infrastructure beneath it. So say OpenShift has the latest security patch that needs to be applied. If you're running the Cloud Pak in IBM Cloud, we can do that with the click of a button, whereas if you're managing OpenShift on your own on-premises hardware, that's something that there is some operational overhead to consider there.
Right. Okay, well, it looks like you're doing a lot to try to help folks move their business forward.
Definitely, and thanks, Mary, for joining us, because I think there's some really key questions, and I think it's great for us to be able to understand that the market really does kind of have that same idea, and from your numbers, I think we're seeing that there is a need for these kinds of capabilities coming up.
Great. Well, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, definitely. All right. If you like this lightboarding session, it's actually part of a larger webcast, which you can catch the replay at the link in the description below.